Good Holy Thursday. Today, as you know, is the feast of the institution of the Eucharist and the table of the Lord. This is, colossally important in our Christian, especially our Catholic faith, in its exercise of our faith, the centrality of the Eucharist, the bread of life, the food of life, the coming together of the community of faith at the table of the Lord. That's not a minor thing. It is extremely central to our faith experience. It's not only in our being nurtured by the Eucharist and the Word of God, both the Word preached and the bread and wine, of course, transformed in the body and blood of Christ, but also the community of faith that surrounds the table. It is where the family of the God comes together in the table of the Lord. You know, you have to really appreciate this. Can I share a thought with you? I don't know if I mentioned this ever before. God, I can't remember half the things I said. The other half I'm confused about. But you understand a dinner, what a dinner is like. It's not a time that you just go there to eat and run. A dinner is a sit down, as it were, where friends come together. Family and friends come together to share the meal, but to share the family, to share the love, to share the conversation and narrative. You had to have lived it to know what this means, and I did. You had to be at home, in my home, at Christmas. I told this story, I know I have. There was the one time of the year, out of the 365 days a year, it was the one time, essentially in this way, of a major holiday, whether it's a Sunday or whatever, that my father was home. Because in the restaurant business, you work when everybody else plays. You quote my mother. Christmas, they closed the restaurant. So Pop never worked on Christmas. Instead, he had the festa, the feast at the dinner, okay? And my grandma, when she was alive, my mother's mother was a superb cook. My father was a chef. You put that combination together. And then when my father's cousin, Frediano, would come, he was a chef. Put that combo together. Think about it. My grandmother could make as good a sauce. My father admitted, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was the finest Italian cook he knew, and that was one hell of a compliment, okay? My father did this and that. Frediano did this and that. He made the prime rib, actually. It was Frediano. But you have to see what the dinner was like, okay? You had to see. The family would come together around 11 in the morning for a late breakfast. My mother, the only thing my mother made was the breakfast. She was not a cook, okay? Okay, but she made a good breakfast, okay? They would come for what we'd call brunch, like a very soft, easy brunch. And friends of the family would come. So you'd have activity in the house from roughly right after Mass, from 10 o'clock on. Around noon or 1 o'clock, people would leave and the family would stay, and some special friends, very special. Aunt Sarah, who was not my aunt, but she would definitely be there, okay? And she'd stay for the whole time. She took all the photographs, okay? And if we had a girlfriend, she would come, all righty? You had to see all that. And we'd sit at the table, and it would begin. And the conversation with the table would begin, and it would go on from roughly 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 o'clock at night. You would never leave the table. When we were little children, they used to kick us out to go out and play. But the adults stayed at the table that entire time. And there was a festa, a dinner, a feast day, in which each part of the meal was served and was nurtured and, nourished, eaten in the celebratory manner by the conversation at the table. I'm not saying that well today, I'm sorry. You had to be there. See? And it was all day long. The only rule where you never showed anger at the table. You never got in an argument. You never got in an argument. That was the only rule. And it was kept. I only saw one time somebody got out of line. Just one time. And it wasn't an argument. It was, one of my relatives knocked over a glass by accident. It was Uncle Harry, and he was the life of the party. God, he was the life of it. He was singing some song that they perfectly. We were all in on it. It was not that, but by accident he put his hands up in dramatic fashion, and he knocked over a glass. Boof! You could hear a pin drop in the house. You couldn't knock a glass over. It was over with. But there was a singular moment. Oof. You see, you had to manage yourself. No one's going to manage you. You had to manage yourself at the table. You had to honor the table. When I think of the Eucharist, that's what I think of, is the family coming together with all our joys and our uniqueness, sometimes our suffering and our pain. But we come together, and when we eat the bread of life, we eat and drink the body and blood of Christ, we eat it together as a family. We don't raise our voice. We don't get contentious with each other. We don't get out of line. We come together in the fraternity of love, a fellowship of love. Okay? Different. Not saying we're all conformists at all. We bring the uniqueness of our lives to the table. That's why I think the Eucharist is such a powerful symbol, because it is plain. It's a piece of bread and a cheap wine. It's a symbol of humanity itself. It's the fragility of humanity itself. Even the host is so fragile. When I break it, I hope I don't splinter it, that I send particles flying, because it is so, in a sense, stale. It is just that thin and brittle. Okay? What a marvelous symbol of human flesh. And then in the human soul. And you took it to one, it's cheap wine. Okay? It's not Perignon, Dom Perignon. It's cheap wine. It's the symbol of common humanity. And that's what's present at the Eucharist. We come together in our fellow humanity, our fellowship as humans, with the fragility of the Eucharist, our moral lives, our spiritual lives. We bring together fragility, and in so doing, it's transformed into divinity. When I say, this is my body, this is my blood, the bread and the wine become the body and blood of Christ. And so is the church. She's the body and blood of Christ, as fragile and as the host, but as divine as well. It's really true. I love the symbolization of the Eucharist, especially in a simple parish like St. Mark's, where there's no pretense to glamour. It's the little people of God coming together who believe and nurture each other and sustain each other. The great gift, one of the greatest gifts in my life, was the gift of St. Timothy's and St. Mark's Parish, the same parish, okay? Because I learned what the church was there. Not glamour, not high-powered. Every day, the little people of God coming together with their struggles, with their hopes, with their fears, their love, their joys. Baseball field, playing in the back, coaching, women's guild, this and that. The everydayness of life sacralized in the Eucharist, made sacred in the Eucharist. I remember looking out the window when I was studying, of course, at the rectory window, and I'd look out and I'd see kids playing on the backyard, playing soccer on the front lawn, the front parking lot of the church. And I began to realize this is the life of the church. I'd go out in the evening. Father Cronin was the pastor. He'd say, go out and make friends with the parishioners. There's nothing for you in the rectory. And he was right. And I would have went out there and I saw the life of the church in the fathers coaching their children, uncles coaching their children. You see? And I began to see this is the life of the faith. It's the life. It's people of God. Perfect? No. But perfectly holy? Yes. Because they were doing what life called them to do. And I saw how holy and sacred it was. I can never pay my debt to St. Timothy, St. Mark's Parish. I've been there 52 years. 52 years, 4 generations going on 5. I've seen it all. Life, birth. As one Luke Camario said to me one time, you see us born and baptized. You see us in the sacraments. You see us in our death. The whole story of humanity itself, but now it has a face and person. It's the truth. The Eucharist is where we come together in the flesh of our humanity to eat and drink the body and blood of Christ together as a community of love and faith and hope.